Uh, let's look at what you're going to need for the watercolor class, whether you're doing the section on drawing or the section geared toward painting. And I believe one of you signed up for the section on printmaking. So the supplies you need are basically the same, and we'll get more specific information as we go along. But you're all going to need what you're seeing here. Now, first of all, you're going to need watercolors, and there's different brands, and of course they're going to differ in price. So the only thing I ask is, please don't get anything that's super cheap, like $5.99 or $9.99. You're going to need to pay a little more for quality color. Now, I have a basic set here that I picked up from Michael's, and it's a Grumbacher brand, which is a pretty good brand, and you're getting quite an array of colors here. The tubes are, just so you can see the size, they're good size, and you're certainly not going to use all of this, or you shouldn't, during the course. So it should last you, they should last you for some time. But these were a little on the pricey side. However, I got them for 40% off because I had the old Michael's coupon. So make sure you take advantage of that, whether you shop at Michael's or Hobby Lobby. They do have their coupons, and of course if you get a 40% off or 50% off, that's going to help you quite a bit. So these were $50, and I ended up getting for $27, $28. So certainly this is a pricey brand. You could also look at a smaller set, or maybe you're only going to have 7 or 5 colors to choose from. But you're going to be glad you did, because the color quality is going to be so much better than the lesser brand names that are much cheaper and affordable, but you give up the color intensity. Okay. Now, this set also came with this mixing tray. Now, this will work. What you would do is you'd squeeze a little of your color in each of those compartments, and then you dip your brush in water and pick a little and even it out in this area here before you go to use it on the actual paper itself. So this can work. However, I always like having a little more room, so I bought this larger one because it gives me a little bit more room to work the brush, and it has a few more compartments down here. And you will need to clean these out, but it just gives it a little bit more room, a little bit more space. Plus, because of its weight, it sets down and stays on the table a little easier, where this is a little on the flimsy side, so you might have to tape it down. But you are going to need to have an area to mix. Okay. Now, another possibility, I have another palette that I don't have here because I don't have a whole lot of room, that can work. And all it is a piece of glass with a white plastic underneath it, and it gives you a lot more room. Doesn't have the compartments, but it does make it much easier to mix paint on. So you can even use glass with a white sheet of paper underneath if you'd like. You don't need to go out and buy anything super fancy at all. But here are your colors. Okay, and they are going to basically come with a variety. Now, just be careful when you pick up your box that you select, that you do have a variety of warm and cool colors, because sometimes you can buy a set of watercolors and it'll be just earth tones. Okay, and of course that's not going to give you blue or green. So you're going to have mostly yellow and yellow ochre and a variety of other warm colors like orange and yellow, but you're not going to have anything other than that. So just be cautious about what you buy, especially if the price is real reasonable. Make sure you're getting a full set rather than just a limited palette of color. Okay, so got that taken care of. It's also important to remember, is really want to make sure how important it is for you to know that you're going to need paper towels. They can be dish towels, they can be rolled paper towels that you buy at the grocery store, but you do need them. You're going to use a lot of them. Remember, you are using water as your medium here, so you will need to clean your brushes frequently, and so it's good to have paper towels. I don't have a roll that I could bring out here because I've already stolen enough from the kitchen and I've developed a bad reputation for that. So I have a towel which will work as well too. But certainly if you can get some paper towels, that'll work. And speaking of water, you're also going to need some containers. Old pickle or jam jars will work just fine, especially if they're big like this, because they'll hold a lot of water. You want at least two. One of these is going to get really dirty. The other one is to do a final rinse so that you don't contaminate color, and I'll go over that when we first start mixing color and doing some demonstrations. I would also advise you make it a little easier on yourself. If you have an old milk jug or an old large 32-ounce or liter bottle of soda, you still have the plastic container, rinse it out and fill it up with water so that if you need to replenish, it's easier for you to just use that as your source rather than having to go inside the house or go to the other room and fill it up with water and come back. I also have, you can't see it, it's not in the frame of the camera, a large old paper basket or waste basket. It's made of plastic, but a large one that I would dump the dirty water into and then replenish with my clean water, so that once again I'm not running over to the sink and dumping out water and coming back here. I don't have to do a lot of moving around. So again, that and tape is very important. Your paper, while it is watercolor paper, and when I get to it I'll explain it a little bit more, it's not going to be a huge sheet, so you will need to tape it down. And because we're using water, since it is watercolor, even though we're using appropriate paper, watercolor paper, we still want it to stay flat. And of course, when you're using water onto paper, there's a chance that it can want to shrink a little. So having some tape around the edge will keep the shrinking to happen in a flat overall shrinkage rather than it being uneven and cockling and not looking nice for presentation. So again, your paper towels, tape, water container. I would also advise to have a small spritzer bottle. You can get these anywhere at Walgreens, because they usually sell small containers like this, so you can pack things to go more easily in a smaller compartment. And we just use this as we may occasionally have to freshen up the moisture in paper. I'm painting outside. I'm going to paint outside in my patio, and it's going to be hot, so I'm going to be doing this during the day. So we want to make sure that our paper doesn't dry up on us, so you can always freshen up the dampening of the paper by spritzing a little water on it. Okay, you'll also need a simple pencil because we will be sketching. Some of the images that we'll be doing will require a little preparation, not a lot of detail, but just to know where things are going to be on your paper before you start applying watercolor. Something like a B or 2B will be just fine. It's not a drawing, but we do need a paper that a pencil that's not going to be excessively dark, so keep it light. And of course you're going to need watercolor brushes, and I say that because they're different. Watercolor brushes This came, by the way, this came with the set that I bought. Okay, there's one brush, but it's good to have more than one. It's very soft. The bristles are very soft. They're not stiff and hard like many of the bristles that are used for acrylic and oil painting. Let me show you some more here. They tend to almost feel more like animal hair, see, than your traditional painting bristle, because remember, they've got to absorb water, and so we want something that's going to be soft and absorbent rather than stiff and bristly. Okay, so if you're not sure, make sure you look at the package of brushes, and it should list watercolor as one of the media that those brushes can be used for. And you don't need this many here. I would say it's nice to have a big one like this, maybe not quite this large, just so that you can wet the paper more easily rather than trying to wet a full sheet with a little brush like this. You've got one with a little more room here to make it a little easier, and then something that'll allow you to, like this one has a point on it, so if you need to do something that's in which you need more control, then that brush is going to work for you. I also advise you to have, I know it sounds silly, you're not going to quite sure understand how this works, but this is just a stick from the yard that I fashioned a point on, because this can be used to do line work instead of using the tip of a soft brush. You can be surprised at how much control you can get if you need to do something real fine and delicate that's linear. I've got another one here that's made from a kitchen skewer. I just used a knife and made the point a little longer and a little narrower at the tip. So you've got brushes, you've got the stick, pencils, talked about water, a spritzer bottle, small one, and of course your watercolor, and paper towels, tape or a towel, and you're pretty much set to go, but we need paper. So this is a brand of watercolor paper that I bought from Michael's. Hobby Lobby also has them, and it's watercolor paper. And likewise, my comments made about watercolor paint is please don't buy cheap, inexpensive watercolor paper. Okay, watercolor paper has to be thicker and heavier. Right? It's usually going to feel like double the thickness of regular paper, maybe even triple the thickness. And of course, buy a white, because you know the interesting thing about watercolor, what appeals to people most about watercolor, is the intensity of color, and a lot of that comes from the white surface of the paper giving color a glowing quality. Like looking at a stained glass window, it's the light from the outdoors which brings that color to life. And so here in watercolor painting, we want to kind of keep that in mind by making sure we use a white paper, because you will find some off-white which is going to perhaps maybe encourage colors to become a little less intense, a little more dull. The size that I've got here is 12 by 18. This will be fine. We're just learning the process and methods associated with watercolor. We really don't have a lot of time to do anything more elaborate in scale. So let's start off in a more comfortable picture plane format, something that's easier to control because it's small. Plus, you won't need as big a work area. Now, you don't need an easel. This is probably the only painting medium in which you don't need an easel. Because you're using water, your surface of paper has to be on a flat surface, not raised up at an angle, because of course you're going to have dripping resulting. So this paper is a cold press, and It's 140 pound. And paper comes in weights, watercolor paper. So just to give you an idea, if they don't have this particular brand of Canson, make sure that what you are looking at or looking for is 140 pound. Okay, so that's a nice thick um, weight, and of course we are going to tape it down. If you have a piece of board that's approximately this size, that'll work just fine. We're going to start out working on half sheets just for the first couple of projects before we end up using a fuller size. Okay, so just to give you a rundown on materials. Now, I also advise you don't have to buy this, but if you go on the internet, you might want to look up a color wheel and have it at your disposal so that you can reference it during your paintings, so that you can have a better understanding of color mixing. And for instance, right here, this is the cover of this pocket guide, but it has your color wheel, and that really helps to have that around, so that when you're mixing, or if you're wanting to figure, well, my yellow is too intense, I want to quiet it down, well, then you can use the color wheel to figure out how you can dumb it down a notch. Okay, and there's a lot of, the nice thing about this one, it gives you some other information about color in general, to further information for a little more in-depth knowledge about color mixing. Okay, but don't feel like you have to go out and buy one. There are plenty of these on the internet, but it's important that you have a good quality color printer, because you don't want the colors to be off, because then you're not going to really get a true idea of what a true yellow looks like, or a violet on a color wheel, if your printer's a little on the how do you say, less than true side of color printing. Okay, so there you go. That's all you need. Please, again, take advantage of shopping at those stores which do have coupons available. You have Hobby Lobby, Michael's. Don't forget, there's also Jerry's Artorama on San Pedro. Now, the coupons there are a little different. They usually don't publish coupons until the beginning of a school semester. So we really don't see a lot of coupons from Jerry's until August or until January. However, if you go in the store, they may have some there available. But just make sure that you keep the same thing in mind, that you get what you pay for. Okay, so if you buy a set of watercolors that are $5.99, you're going to get color that looks like $5.99 watercolor. Okay, I have these old tubes that I bought here, which these were a little less expensive than the Grumbacher. You see, they're so old that the brand has washed away, but I can still see the color, and I'm going to use these as an addition to the array of colors that I have in my set. Okay, so that's all you need. Make sure that you're ready to go for the first class meeting. I'm not going to do a demonstration the first day, and the way this will work is I'd like to meet with everyone on Zoom the first day of class, and I'll send you the link with the date and time in the next couple of days. And I'm also going to open up Blackboard so that you'll be able to contact each other, and I'll be able to email all of you as a group. I'm going to be doing demonstrations and recording them, and then giving you a link to the YouTube site where I'm posting these, so that you can view them at your leisure. Now, be cautious about that term leisure, because if you're a procrastinator, that can get you in trouble. So I'll immediately email everyone with the notice that a new demonstration has been posted. I'll also do a demonstration with each new project. And so please try to stay on task so that you don't fall behind and are rushing to catch up. Okay, so that's why I want you to know about materials so that you can maybe get as many as you can, perhaps over the a week, so that you're not waiting till after we start to track down your supplies. Okay, so I'll be using video, and I'm always available by email, but the only time we're going to meet in Zoom is for the first class period. And after an assignment is completed, I'm going to ask, and those of you that were in my drawing classes during the Maymester, I ask that when you complete an assignment, I'll give you the due date, but I want you to take a picture with your cell phone and email it to me, as then I do a posting using PowerPoint to do a critique of the work submitted. I narrate it so that you can hear my comments about your work, and I'll send it to everyone after they're completed. I had approximately 10 students in my Drawing 1 class and 2 in Drawing 2 during Maymester, and so was able to do one of these almost every night, because with drawing I was expecting assignments to be completed every day. Now with watercolor it'll be a little different. We'll be doing things that maybe you have 2 or 3 days to complete and then turn them in, and then we'll do a critique before moving on to the next project, etc., etc., etc. That way you're always getting feedback. So please stay on task and don't fall behind. It doesn't matter if you want to get to the projects in the morning or afternoon, but just remember, you really need to read color well. So I really strongly advise you to not work in the evening, okay, if at all possible. Try to make sure that you're able to have a source of natural sunlight through an open window. Just open the curtains, let some of that sunlight in, so that if you're in the bedroom or the living room or even the dining room, that you have light from outdoors coming in to help with your judgment of color. Okay. One last item that can come in handy. You don't have to have one, but if you have a hair dryer, a small one, it can help speed up the drying time a little. Okay, so that if you need something to dry before you put another layer of color onto the painting, you don't have to wait as long. But that's something that you don't really need. It can just help a little. Okay, again, to help speed things along, you can just put it outside, and the heat that we're going to be having, especially next week, because I think we're already getting into the hundreds, will expedite the drying process. Okay, so after you get this, let me know if you have any questions through email, and I'll be sending you the information for our Zoom meeting, and then we'll be ready to get started. And as we go along, those of you in drawing for watercolor or printmaking for watercolor, we will talk about additional things that you might need. Okay? All right. Thank you. Look forward to working with you this semester.